Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Daniel, and here today I'm joined with the President and COO of EnStream, Almis Ledas, to talk all about the digital identity space, EnStream, and what the future has in store for both. Almis, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Daniel.
Of course. So I guess we could start with a bit of an introduction about yourself and how you got started with EnStream.
Very good. So as you mentioned, my name is Almis Ledas. I'm the president and COO of EnStream, which is a partnership of Canada's national wireless carriers, Bell, Rogers, and Telus. And that is my background in the industry is about 30 years in the wireless communications industry, from which it evolved into participation at EnStream.
Incredible. Could you give us a bit of a background as to what EnStream is and its role in the digital verification space?
Yes, like many people, virtually all of the communication I have with the outside world now comes to me electronically. Very little arrives at my door in the mailbox. Recognizing that that was going to be the case and that the mobile number was a central part of receiving messages, the carriers realized that there was no central repository of mobile numbers that would allow parties to verify what number connected to what person. The old telephone directory is a distant memory right now, and that information was available to everyone. From the get-go, the mobile number was considered private information, and there was no published source to verify that. Also recognizing that the industry is fragmented across multiple carriers, it would be hard for any party to figure out what company had what number for what person. So the carriers had to get together and provide a way to securely, while respecting the privacy of the individuals and that information, create a system that would allow numbers to be verified across the entire industry. And it was to solve that problem that EnStream was created.
Very interesting. Could you explain a little bit about how EnStream's technology works in that process?
Yes. So at the heart of EnStream's technology, and pretty much at the heart of the mobile industry, is the SIM card, or the subscriber identity module. If you looked inside your phone, or when you first activate your phone, a SIM card is inserted, and that chip on that SIM card is the same as the chip on your banking card. So it's a very secure microprocessor that now exists in the hands of some 5 billion mobile users across the planet. And regardless of where you are, a message or a call or an email sent to you will find you, because that chip provides a secure link to the serving carrier. And that is the way the carriers manage all of their connected devices across all of the account holders. So that is evolved into a very secure way to find people and manage that connection. Now, the carriers do that and manage multi-billion-dollar industries by virtue of that connection. What EnStream does is make that verification channel, that connection to that subscriber, available to third parties so that they too can verify who is the holder of that phone and what device is theirs.
Very interesting. Now, being at the forefront of this digital identity verification space, how have you seen the environment change or even grow during and post the COVID era throughout Canada and worldwide?
So, as I mentioned earlier, over the last decade or even 2 decades, we've become more and more reliant on our mobile devices as a principal means of communication. We hear very often now stories about when people move. It's maybe an afterthought to make sure you alert your bank or your carrier that your address has changed. But if your phone changes or your number changes, generally that is pretty much instantaneous, not only to your business contacts, but to your friends and family who are using that to stay in touch with you. What happened during the pandemic is there was a realization that we could no longer rely on physical channels to create new relationships or confirm existing relationships. So whether it's, I mean, we've all stood in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and many government services were designed to be delivered face to face. Opening a bank account was designed to be executed face to face. Getting your phone was designed to be a process that you do in store. And whenever there was a doubt, be it a bank or a government or a phone company, they would simply ask you to come down to the nearest retail point of presence and re-verify yourself for or execute the transaction that you were looking to execute. When it became apparent that you could no longer rely on that, uh, a lot of attention was paid at securing how that could be executed digitally. And I would say to this day, there's not a perfect solution, although a lot of effort has gone in to ensuring that people are who they say they are once that relationship is established over a digital channel. So that is what EnStream's forte is, to help verify identity digitally. And during the pandemic, we saw a significant uptick both in the volume of verifications that we were processing and the interest from new parties in establishing new verification methods.
That makes a lot of sense, Almis. So, kind of looking, I guess, at your product lineup, or even broader in the industry, what other forms of identity verification services exist, and how does EnStream service complement or differ from those?
Well, so the people who are kind of focused on the identity space will typically say there are three ways to verify yourself: what you are, what you have, and what you know. Now, what you are is typically physical attributes. It could be as simple as recognizing someone's face or body type or voice. It could be a fingerprint, it could be a retina scan, but it is a physical attribute. What you have is generally a credential, a driver's license, a passport, a social insurance card that helps establish your identity when you're meeting someone for the first time. And then what you know is information based. It could be a combination, it could be a password, it could be specific information that helps enhance your credibility. The challenges digitally are that you can't really prove what you are or what you have. It all boils down to what you know. So that's why passwords were the first and most common way of identifying yourself online. Beyond that, there are apparent ways to use what you have or what you are. You could use a facial, a selfie. You could scan a driver's license. But by the time it reaches the other end, it's not a driver's license. It's not a face. It's just a string of bits and bytes. It's information. So that information can be captured. It can be rerouted. It all boils down to an information stream. The thing about EnStream is we leverage, as I mentioned earlier, the chip in the phone. So it is a way of using what you have and using that hard credential to say that this is the same device that connected last time, and this device is registered to a person that you recognize. So the challenges are complex in terms of verifying an identity, whether it's in person or digitally. But EnStream allows you to use a physical credential in addition to any information that's married together with that to prove identity.
Interesting. So that sort of layering approach, is that one of the solutions to kind of those challenges? Are there other challenges that exist?
Oh, so the verification of identity has always been challenging. If we go back a couple of hundred years, people didn't really verify identity. The very first requirements were for couriers and ambassadors from one city to another, and they were issued letters of introduction or credentials or seals. And no sooner were these letters of introduction, credentials, or seals issued than they were duplicated and forged. So there is a constant battle between people developing identity verification tools and fraudsters seeking to overcome them. And whether it's the technology to capture a selfie being offset by some kind of AI-generated reproduction, whether it's passwords that are being attacked by fraudsters with various phishing and fake websites and social engineering techniques to overcome that. So there are attempts made at capturing physical attributes and communicating them digitally. There are attempts made at using knowledge-based questions and knowledge and ever more complex passwords. And the more these are layered, the more difficult it is for a fraudster to steal an identity. But the fact that it's difficult has not really forced them to give up or stop trying. So that battle rages, but so far the physical credential has yet to be hacked or duplicated. And a way to leverage that to help verify identity still is a very important foundational element that is a big benefit to security.
Interesting. Do you view artificial intelligence as a big threat, as I guess where it stands right now?
Well, it's both a big asset and a big threat. So, we've long since abandoned the notion that hackers and fraudsters are kind of lone individuals in hoodies operating in basements. These are sophisticated fraud rings. So, the industry, the verification industry, is marshaling its forces to help identify sources of attack, as well as the fraudsters are marshaling their resources to help overcome the tools that are being put in place to combat that fraud. I listened to one of the specialists in this area say how strong AI is in determining things like weather patterns or areas of physical science. And that's because these are complex and AI helps learn and model these effectively. The problem with fraud is the physical world is not trying to trick us. As we are trying to model the fraud and attacks and prevent them, the fraudsters are trying to figure out how we're modeling these and trying to alter their methods to overcome what we're doing. So it is truly a horse race. And that's why I think a physical credential that someone has helps anchor solutions in a way that's very hard for a fraudster to attack.
That's fascinating, especially with the prominence of artificial intelligence as of late. Um, EnStream is supported by some of Canada's leading telecommunications companies. Could you add some color as to why they're involved with EnStream and how they're involved in the digital identity space?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of reasons why they're involved and how they're involved. As I mentioned, the SIM card is a very important asset for verifying a connection. I mean, it's the difference between using a post office box or using a physical address as a point of reference in the real world. One is more verifiable than another, and a phone is verifiable by the telco. As I mentioned before, there are over 5 billion people now using mobile devices, and the phone number matched to a SIM card is the most common identity credential available anywhere in the world. There are countries where you will identify yourself for voting and government services by your phone number because no other credential exists in those places. About 150 countries require you to use government ID to get a phone of any sort. So services anchored on your mobile account are becoming the new form of name and address rather as a way of verifying your identity. Recognizing that, the carriers in Canada wanted to make sure that those services are readily available and easily deployable in Canada, and also that that information doesn't leave the country because privacy laws vary nation by nation, and you wouldn't want, at least we wouldn't want, our information to be stored in some server somewhere overseas where it's available to parties that are not under domestic control. So I think it's important for identity platforms to be established in Canada, and the telcos have the tools, the reputation, the capabilities, and the scale to do that effectively.
Interesting. So, sort of staying on the topic of privacy, how does EnStream ensure that the security of personal information during this verification process remains at EnStream and remains
Very
anonymous?
important question. And really, we rely on two principles. One is we never release personally identifiable information. So the telco's information never leaves telco control. What we do is a relying party will send us a name and address or a phone number or a name, address, and phone number. We will retrieve that information associated with that phone number from the telco. We will do the comparison for that verification. We will destroy all of the information and we will return the result. But we never release name and address information to another party. We simply do the verification. The only thing we keep is a record of the transaction, a secured version of the mobile number, a timestamp, and we need that for audit purposes. But we don't store and we don't release any personal information.
It's very good to know. Could you provide some real-world examples as to EnStream services?
Yeah, the two most common examples are well, the first is we're all probably familiar with using the mobile device as a second factor of authentication, receiving a one-time passcode when we're performing some kind of interaction that requires additional security. We know, and it's globally understood, that the one-time passcode delivered to the mobile device has some vulnerabilities, the most common of which are mobile account takeover by way of either a SIM swap or a fraudulent number port. The relying party, be largely a bank that wants to use that SMS one-time passcode or SMS OTP, can ping us and we can check to see whether there's been any suspicious activity on that device and ensure that that device can be trusted. And if the SIM has been changed or the number has been ported or the device has been reported lost or stolen, we can stop the bank's reliance on that one-time passcode and suggest that they use another way of verifying that particular transaction. The second is we can also manage an interaction across life cycle events of the phone. So we know the phone, we know the device, we know the number, we know the SIM card. If you get a new phone, a bank may say, we don't recognize that device. We can ensure that, well, this is the same SIM card with the same account holder. The device serial number is different, so they've just got a new device. So we can improve the customer experience by eliminating the number of false positive alerts that a party might get when any one of the phone number, the SIM card, or the device is changed. We can help with the logic to say, here's what's happened in this particular case. It can still be trusted.
That sounds powerful. How do you see the future of digital identity? We talked about AI. Are there any other things that you foresee over the coming years in the digital identity verification space?
Yeah, so the trend, as we've talked about, is increasing reliance on digital channels and increasing reliance on verifying the identity in a digital way. And what we're now seeing in the very early stages of a digital identity wallet. So it's now about 10 years that we've seen mobile payment wallets appear on our phones, be it Apple Pay or Android Pay or Samsung Pay. And there are a lot of credentials, airline tickets, loyalty cards, payment cards can be stored in that wallet securely. And the way those are executed securely is they're managed by a central hub. So in Apple's case, Apple manages the link to each device and can ensure that it is that device sending that particular credential to that party, acts as a third-party verifier. Identity credentials are issued by a number of different parties, whether it's provincial governments issuing driver's licenses, national governments issuing passports, provincial governments issuing health credentials. Those can be linked to a central hub and deployed into a central wallet. And I think if we were to look forward 5 years or 10 years, we will also have verified identity credentials in our mobile phones and would be able to present those credentials to parties securely online. We'd also be able to present those credentials to parties in physical interactions. And this will have many benefits. I mean, rather than handing over a driver's license as proof of age, you just be able to say, I'm of age, without releasing your name and address information to someone who may not need it. So I think it'll allow us to more precisely manage our identity information. And this concept of self-sovereign identity, where we will be more in control of what information we release to someone, and that information will be verified by a third party in a way that they can be confident that it can be trusted.
It sounds like a very exciting future. Well, anyways, Almis, thank you so much for coming on and answering these questions. If you watching this video are interested in EnStream or their services, please check out their website at enstream.com or their email info@enstream.com. Almis, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Daniel.